female wearing a dress with brown hair. That is extremely unusual. It's rare to have a female attacker.
But this case does not involve a female mass shooter. It involves a male mass shooter who may have identified as trans, sure, but that doesn't change biology or sex or reality. Up first, we have to talk about something really sad and really tragic that I think, of course, requires a lot of compassion and nuance. There's been this horrific news of a mass shooting in Canada where, of course, many people were killed and injured in what's still a relatively rare but not totally unheard of occurrence in the United States, but is almost unheard of in Canada. And so my heart goes out to all the Canadians listening and viewing, and I'm so sorry that this happened. But unfortunately, there is a political, or I guess I would say ideological aspect to this story, and in particular to the mainstream media's coverage of it, because it has been revealed that the shooter, whose name I won't mention because I don't really believe in giving these people infamy, which they sometimes crave, was born biologically male and identified as a woman. I will not be using his preferred pronouns. I do not believe in that nonsense. I think when you commit such a heinous act and you violate the social contract so egregiously, any social courtesy that we were offering you is totally off the table. Whereas as just for, a trans person I'm friends with or what have you, it doesn't bother me at all to use their pronouns as long as it's not something fake. If it's just she, her, or what have you. In cases like this, I find it absurd that anyone would care to show respect to the mass murderer or allow anyone to get the mistaken impression that this was a crime committed by a female. But because of its ideological capture, that is what a lot of mainstream media coverage of this is essentially doing, essentially perpetuating false information, lies about this mass shooting that are woefully misleading to the public, all because they've been so thoroughly captured by gender ideology. Let's listen to this report from Sky News of the UK, not to be confused with Sky News Australia, which is more conservative, but Sky News UK, which it's just astounding, the level of inaccuracy and misleadingness of this coverage. Listen to this.
Deadly shooting at a secondary school in a remote part of Canada. It's not what you would expect. The attacker was described as a female in a dress with brown hair.
This is Sky News international correspondent John Sparks reporting.
Brown hair. So here's what we know about a tragic day in a place called Tumbler Ridge. It took police 2 minutes to respond to calls from the local high school, but they weren't able to prevent the shooting. Students were barricading themselves in the classrooms using desks and chairs to block the doors. Parents were waiting at the town hall to hear about the fate of their children. There was another shooting in a nearby home with 2 fatalities there, and the police believe this shooting was connected to the school attack. Tumbler Ridge is a small, isolated community in the province of British Columbia, a 13-hour drive northeast of Vancouver. It's close-knit, with a population of just over 2,000 people. And I know what it's like. I grew up in small-town Canada. You greet and chat to everybody you see. Car doors and front doors, they all remain unlocked, and your business tends to be the community's business.
Again, this is just the facts of the story, and it really is terrible and heartbreaking stuff, and my heart goes out to everyone. I understand, having grown up in like suburban America, this kind of atmosphere that he's describing where people don't worry about crime and people trying to hurt them, and to have the community's sense of security and safety so shattered like this, it's something I would not wish on anyone, not my worst enemy in the world. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. We're going to have to, unfortunately, in part because of the ideological capture of the Canadian government and their system and much of the media just parroting it like brainless puppets. We're going to have to talk about this, but first and foremost, this is not a political story. It is a human story. And please don't forget that. Don't forget to think about the people who've lost loved ones and who are grieving right now. So as we get into the more controversial part of the Sky News report, I think you'll see why I unfortunately do believe we have to talk about some of the ideological aspects at play here. Listen to the rest of this.
As well. And that's why I think this will come as such a shock to Canadians. You can see the Premier of British Columbia struggling to find the right words here in front of the cameras.
It's hard to know what to say on a night like tonight. This is the kind of thing that feels like it happens in other places and not close to home in a way that that this feels for so many British Columbians and Canadians.
School shootings are something that happen south of the border in the United States, not in Canada. The last time something like this happened, it was in Montreal. And the gun laws in Canada are tight. You have to do a training course to get a license. And if you own a gun, you have to register it with the police. You can't just walk into Walmart and buy yourself an assault rifle. It doesn't work like that in Canada. The police say the attacker was dead when they found her. She had a self-inflicted wound, and she matched the description given in an earlier police alert. Female, wearing a dress with brown hair. That is extremely unusual. It's rare to have a female attacker.
I think we will struggle to determine the why, but we're going to try and do our best to determine what transpired that day and what led up to this tragic event.
That is a candid assessment from a member of a deeply shocked community.
So it's extremely rare to have a female mass shooter. Fact check true. But this case does not involve a female mass shooter. It involves a male mass shooter who may have identified as trans, sure, but that doesn't change biology or sex or reality. And it is incredibly misleading for Sky News to nowhere in this package present the information that had been reported at the time of that they shared this post on social media, that this person was trans. You are making them think that people think that this is a female school shooter, something you almost never see, when that's literally not the case. So you are in service of some ideology or of what? The feelings of a dead mass murderer, which no sane person should care about, actively misleading people about the true nature of this crime in a way that I just find to be insanely gaslighty and just totally, it's like you perfectly designed it in a laboratory to destroy public trust in media, because people will understandably feel lied to when they see this kind of coverage and then find out the reality. And I actually looked because I was curious, like, did Sky News update this? And so I went and found some of the articles or coverage from Sky News do mention, several paragraphs down after calling this person a woman, that he was born biologically male. But the actual text reproduction of this guy's package here that we showed is online and has not been updated, right? And does not mention anything about the shooter being trans. I find that astonishing as a journalist myself, that maybe in the aftermath when he was preparing this package, he somehow missed this part of the news. But the fact that you would not add any sort of update or addendum to the story suggests either total incompetence or like a willful attempt to mislead people in a truly, truly sinister way that I just cannot separate from an ideological agenda that is in no way unbiased. That's the thing. It's like, whether you like it or not, by doing this, you are taking a side in a cultural debate. I guess, like, I would struggle, actually, as if I was stepping back into my journalist role and trying to say how to neutrally describe such an incident. But the closest I would maybe get to would be to say, like, trans-identifying shooter, and then say biologically male, comma, but identified as a woman, comma, and then try to avoid pronouns and use names. Because if you use the pronouns, you're sort of taking a side in the debate. But if you're going to use one pronoun, I would say maybe not the preferred pronoun of the mass shooter. Hottest take, I know. But it's not just the media, and it's not just the Sky News. There's so much more to unpack about the insane way this story is being spun and covered. But first, guys, do make sure to subscribe, do hit the like button if you can, and consider becoming a channel member to support my content. I try to stay independent and nonpartisan and nuanced, but the easiest way to blow up on YouTube is just to pander to the far left or far right and only tell people what they want to hear. I do it differently here, so I do need support from viewers like you. You can call me PBS if you would like, but maybe do consider becoming a channel member, hitting the join button or the link in the description to support my content. You'll also unlock early access to full-length ad-free episodes of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast with all those annoying YouTube mid-roll ads that come in mid-sentence, disabled just for the members. So hit the join button, link in comments, all of that, if you're able to. But regardless, please, guys, we gotta talk more about this story, which really does shock me and break my heart. So it's not just Sky News, but lots of mainstream media outlets engaged in very misleading coverage of the story. Here's a headline from Reuters. Canadian school shooter identified as 18-year-old woman with mental health issues. Oh boy. Is the woman in the room with us? Because it's not giving woman to me when you psychotically murder innocent people. That's actually a very male-coded thing to do, statistically speaking. And we will come back to that because the statistics are being altered about this kind of thing in a very, very disturbing way to me. And lots of these articles, like if you get 7 or 8 paragraphs in, they will mention in one comma, like breakaway, who was born male and then transitioned to female, which is misleading language because you can't change your sex, right? You could say you changed your identity or how you live, but you can't change to female. Female refers to your biological sex, which cannot change. But anyway, it's like, it is misleading beyond belief because journalists have to operate under the reality and truth that most people don't make it past the headline. And even those who do rarely make it past the first 3 paragraphs of an article. So important information needs to be above that fold. Otherwise, you are willfully misleading people, or at least doing so through neglect. Some more examples of this. Toronto Star, developing. Police identify 18-year-old female, blank name, I'm not going to say it, as Tumbler Ridge school shooter. Me when I lie. Like this person isn't female. So we are just putting factually untrue statements in news headlines now to coddle the feelings of deceased mass murderers. What the frick are we doing here, people? Still in 2026, people are playing these stupid frickin' games. It's actually breathtaking. It's actually astonishing. ABC News of Australia, not of the US. Similar headline. Breaking. The person who carried out a school massacre is an 18-year-old woman with mental health issues, but she did not give a motive for one of the worst mass shootings in Canada's history. I hate it here. But then we will wonder, why don't people trust mainstream media anymore? Why do they go to crazy people like Candace Owens? Yeah, well, maybe if mainstream media wasn't so obviously ideologically captured, people wouldn't do that. But at least in Canada, we're not quite so bad in the United States here, federally at least, though some blue states do stuff that's like almost this insane. It's actually the law enforcement are captured as well. Listen to a couple clips. This is from the deputy police chief who is handling the deputy commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Dwayne McDonald, during a press conference respecting the pronouns of the deceased shooter and implicitly kind of tisking a reporter who declined to do so. Listen to this.
If you have questions, I'm prepared to take them at this time.
Officer Romina Dea from Global News, could you please expand a little bit on the suspect? Was he known to police? Were there any red flags regarding his mental health?
So a suspect is identified as an 18-year-old female by the name of Jessie. We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues.
What the hell is going on here? The police are denying reality. They're saying this person was a female, which is not true. This was a biological male who may have identified as a woman, but as far as I'm concerned, whatever like social fiction polite people are willing to engage in for a normal person, just try to blend in and be happy, goes out the window when you do a mass shooting. And when you're making the statement that this person was a female, you're talking about their biological sex, you're lying. You're literally saying false information at a press conference, giving the media and the public information about the perpetrator or a seeming perpetrator. I guess you have to say alleged, but like it seems pretty obvious, of a mass casualty event, and you are worried about what? Their feelings? So shouldn't really matter, and factual accuracy should surely come before that. But that, I guess, even the police in Canada are ideologically captured to this extent, because they made it very clear they will be respecting the mass shooter's pronouns. Listen to the second clip.
We've heard all around the world reports coming out from different media, not local but world, and we've heard people from Tumbler Ridge, actually people that know the shooter, and they are all saying that this person is transgender. Why is the RCMP not speaking to this? Why are we hiding this from the public?
Well, first off, thank you for your question. We're not hiding it. In fact, you're the first media to ask the question. I will say this. We identified the suspect as they chose to be identified in public and in social media. I can say that Jesse was born as a biological male who approximately, the information that I have, approximately 6 years ago began to transition to female and identified as female both socially and publicly.
Unfortunately, we've heard a lot of transgender as masculine. Do you think there's a correlation here?
It's too early to say whether that has any correlation in this investigation. I think it's important to recognize that this investigation is still in its infancy. We have scenes still lock down the school and the residence while we execute search warrants and gather further evidence and talk to witnesses that may have further evidence for police.
Sorry, but this is just insane. There's no other words for that. The police officer acknowledging this person is biologically male, but saying, well, we're going to accept their truth and their identity as female. Maybe not, actually, when you kill innocent people. Maybe then we don't have to respect your identity. Like, what is going on here? The fact is the person's a biological male based on their biology, based on the structure of their reproductive system. This is widely known, and you're going to use female pronouns for this person, which the law enforcement did throughout the press conference, and play pretend, which is fine in the case of maybe a normal person if you just want to be polite, but you're going to do all of that. Is that not making a mockery of the victims, that you are spending so much mental energy trying to what? Respect the identity and feelings of the dead mass murderer? Therefore, pretending that the person who killed all these people was female, even though that's not true. This feels like we're in an upside down world, folks. And it seems like perfectly designed to make people lose trust in law enforcement, which is not what you would think would be the goal of public-facing law enforcement officials. But apparently that's what they do in Canada. And there's one more piece to this that I find there's a couple more things to say about this, actually, but one more piece of this I want to touch on is that when it comes to criminology and when it comes to violent crime and statistics, actually biological sex is a meaningful dimension, because when you're crafting public policies, you do have to be aware of statistical and demographic differences. And if we're just being honest, it is almost exclusively males who commit these kinds of mass shootings and events. But in Canada, this will be listed statistically as having been committed by a female, even though that is literally untrue. So reading here from the CAWS BAR, the Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights Organization, here is their reporting about how Canada tracks this kind of statistic. As of January 2019, the sex of criminals and victims of crime are no longer recorded in Canada. Statistics Canada, in collaboration with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, have replaced the variable sex with self-declared gender in the Uniform Crime Reporting Survey. The UCR is compiled from police data, and it is a vital tool for researchers and policymakers who seek to understand the frequency and characteristics of crime in Canada. By making this incoherent change, the Government of Canada has undermined the reliability of crime statistics. Labeling male-perpetrated crime as female-perpetrated crime is not only inaccurate, it is obscene. No woman, under any circumstances, should have to endure the criminal justice system referring to her male rapist as a woman. Yes. Here's another crazy thing. According to them, they said that the Canadian government never even announced these changes, just kind of quietly made them and changed the way they were tracking it. Call me a crazy, but I don't think it is bigoted to be bothered by the fact that crimes carried out by males are being listed as being carried out by females because of like their gender identity or whatever, which is not the relevant metric. The relevant metric is their sex, because we observe these differences across biology, differences in aggression and violence. And we should not be muddying important statistics to obfuscate reality, to coddle the feelings of, in this case, dead criminals. Like, what is going on here? This seems obscene to me. And I am not somebody who has a problem with trans people, trans adults living their best lives. I am not somebody who is opposed to that or thinks they're all evil or anything of the sort. I've already seen a lot of people on the right wing using this tragedy and others, a few others recently like it, to suggest that all trans people are dangerous, or even some to argue got to deprive all trans people of having gun rights or other sorts of things. I don't support any of that. I view everyone as an individual. For a long time, there was no statistical support for the idea that trans people were disproportionately committing shootings. Maybe super recently there's been an uptick in them, but we don't have hard data on this. To me, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't conclusively change anything for me, because I'm first and foremost an individualist, and I would never support demonizing millions of people based on the actions of, like, at most 8 or 9 individuals who belong to some demographic blob. Like, I would never want, and people, progressives often do this, never want to demonize all white men because of the actions of a couple hundred sick, evil white men. And even when there are statistical over or underrepresentations, those can be meaningfully discussed without demonizing or discriminating against vast majorities who do nothing of the sort. But we also should be real about the fact that there's at least a strain of trans activism online that is violent and unhinged. And anybody who's ever criticized any of this stuff will know that from firsthand experience. And I can tell you that. So it's a nuanced conversation that should be happening without demonization or dehumanization of any entire group of people. But we should not be denying reality and prioritizing the feelings of dead mass murderers in media coverage or crime statistics or law enforcement presentation. That's my apparently controversial take on what's going down in Canada. Again, my heart goes out to everyone involved, and I'm so sorry this happened, and wish that we didn't live in a world where this kind of thing had to be so intensely politicized and immediately turned into a culture war dispute. But unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. That's my take on it all, but you guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button if you haven't yet, and do consider becoming a channel member to support my work if you can.